Yup,
What
Cool. I'm
happened?
back.
he's back.
All right, cool. That should keep me from cutting out and stuff. Sorry
Alright,
about that.
Does anyone remember what we were talking about before we stopped?
We were talking about pre-workout, and we were
Yeah.
asking Shawn if he ever took pre-workout.
I've never actually taken any pre-workout.
Oh, so you're all natural.
So I have messed with caffeine. I've drunk Red Bull, Arizona. I'm at Red Bull, Arizona Energy, Monster, Rockstar, NOS. If there's
Okay.
energy, just about tried it. So I've dabbled with caffeine, but I had like a really interesting experience with it. Is that what you guys are trying to discuss?
No, but pre-workout is a different level, though.
Yeah, I know that.
What do you mean interesting experience?
So I drank Red Bull, or at least one energy drink, or like even high energy coffee, like the triple shots, like daily. And then last fall, my no, not last fall, 2 years ago, my eyelids would twitch uncontrollably for 3 months. Like, I mean, literally involuntarily, I'd feel my eyelids start twitching and spasming for like even maybe 10 minutes at a time, and I couldn't stop it, couldn't do anything.
Wow.
Did you go to the doctor?
No.
Oh, you just figured it was the caffeine, so you stopped?
Yeah. And then I had one day in the gym, so I wasn't having the best workout. I was trying to do some shoulder pressing and stuff. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to go get a NOS. So I got a NOS, chugged it, went back. And I had like this really, really bad chest pain. It's like the worst chest pain I've ever had. And I thought, shit, I'm having a fucking heart attack. I'm going to die right here. And then I asked a friend about it, and he said he thinks it may have been like an electrolyte imbalance or something. But that sort of set me straight from caffeine. And then from January 1st on this year, I've actually made a note, no more energy drinks at all. Like, okay, every once in a while, I'll drink like a coffee, but I've just been switching to like tea exclusively and stuff.
Oh, yup. I like tea. Tea's great.
Yeah, tea's good. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, I've luckily always been like kept away from energy drinks and just soda in general because I don't like the
Dude.
what is it like the bubbles? What are they called?
Carbonation?
Yeah, carbonation. I cannot stand carbonation, and I don't like the taste of coffee, so I've like always just stayed away from that stuff. Shui is like
I drink 3 energy drinks a day.
Yeah, Shui forced us to take pre-workout a few times, and then it would just make my ears just start itching and like light on fire. So
I mean, that's the beta alanine.
And like I would I would just be in my bed numb sometimes.
No, because you're just tired.
I don't think that's
so.
true.
Shui, you like feeling like that? You like that?
No, at first no, because you don't feel tired because you took the pre-workout. You feel tired because the pre-workout makes you push your body even more. So like when it wears off, your body's completely exhausted. So that's why you pass out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. It's just
so what's been your experiences with pre-workout?
Pretty good. I've never had an adverse reaction.
That's good.
Like, I think me and caffeine go pretty well because like I drink. I'm right now. I'm about to open my 3rd energy drink of the day, and I usually drink 2 or 3 energy drinks a day. Also, I do have a caffeine addiction. If I don't drink caffeine first thing in the morning, I get a headache that lasts all day.
I used to have those. What's the energy drink level on those energy drinks? How many milligrams?
It's only 100. So like.
Okay, that's not
Yeah.
bad.
But a scoop of pre-workout has 400 milligrams of caffeine.
Yeah, and that'll knock you off your ass.
So like I'll drink an energy drink in the morning, and then when I work out in the afternoon, I'll drink another pre-workout. I'll usually do 2 scoops, so 800 milligrams plus. That's like 900 milligrams of caffeine.
You do 900 milligrams of caffeine at once?
Yeah, I do like probably every 3rd day, maybe sometimes every other day.
Yeah,
And I feel fine. I don't feel bad at all.
I was gonna say, like, on average, a person's maximum like recommended daily consumption is like in the 400s.
Yeah, I read that somewhere, but I don't know. I think it's up to the individual.
Yeah, I think it's definitely everyone has a different threshold for that. Like most substances. Damn. Yeah, I'm glad you've had no adverse effects from it and it's helped you.
I know because I know some people who drink one energy drink, and all of a sudden their chest is like
yeah.
They
think they're gonna die.
Yeah, and I'm here sipping on my second one like.
Yeah, I've done that before. I'm like, shit, you want another? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't like how you guys said, yeah, if I don't drink my coffee, I get a headache. Like wouldn't that like deter you from like wanting to keep using that
No, but if I stop
substance?
using it, here's the thing: it lasts like days. So the first, like the day after you stop drinking caffeine, you get a headache that lasts all day. On the second day, it gets even worse. Actually, I had to miss a week of classes last year on my spring semester because I tried to go cold turkey off caffeine. I tried doing it for like a week, and then on like my fourth day, I was bedridden, and like I think my immune system just crashed or something because I couldn't even get the energy to go up and get a drink of water. And then I was
Yeah,
like,
that's
"Fuck it,"
terrible.
and then
Like why
fucking
like
yeah,
and when like yeah, why wouldn't you want to like not have that
it's
like
cool.
that crutch?
I like
It's
caffeine.
tough, man. Yeah, it gives you a rush that like it's very hard to replicate not using caffeine, especially like right when you're about to go to the gym, if you're about to go hiking or something, or like if you're about to go to class and you're feeling groggy. If you could just take a can, it's probably like a can of energy.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's like a can of energy. It's like magic almost.
In fact, I'm about to open mine right now. You want to get ready to see?
This man was licking his lips as you talk. He's
That's what I'm saying. And the other thing too, some of them I found genuinely taste. Like I've had some Red Bulls that they taste good, or Monsters. They don't taste natural, but they taste good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Look at this guy.
What?
Look at this guy.
No,
Nah, caffeine makes me too jittery and like I'm prone to get like anxiety, so
You can get anxiety,
pretty well.
depression from it really easily.
And depression.
Yeah,
Like,
it can exacerbate both of them.
damn.
Can we go back to talking about your major?
Oh yeah, yeah.
You
So
said you want to do storm flooding. What was
I
the
want to do stormwater mitigation
stormwater?
because I feel like that's a big booming industry, especially now as climate change continues and global warming, sea levels are going to rise. There's so many everywhere on Earth. Coastal communities are being affected by sea level rise, and normally too, it's marginalized communities.
Yep.
It's always marginalized communities. It's always minorities because when people, I mean, this is another thing too. A lot of my major is you learn about the institutionalized racism within society and how people are marginalized environmentally as well as with normal societal needs. Like, you know how people are normally, you always hear about how minorities are marginalized with not getting the best jobs, best education, that type of thing. But then with my major, I was able to see one step further how they're marginalized with their housing, where they live, being forced to live next to pollutants and stuff. Like in Baltimore City, asthmatic rates by some of those factories are incredibly high. And then the predominant populations there are African American people. And then that's not by choice. It's marginalization. It's redlining, blockbusting, all that. It's just that's something I could do a lecture on itself.
It all starts with the planning. It all starts with the
planning. Yeah, it all starts with the planning. A lot of it stems back to I took a 400 level course last semester. No, 2 semesters ago. I liked a lot, and I would have learned more, but we switched to online learning mid semester called Black Geography. So it's a funny name, but the geography is about the class is about the geography of African American people. And you learn a lot about how a lot of things came to be. And then I also took a class on urban geography and economic geography. And those 3 classes, it really gave me a good understanding of how, like back in the 1900s and stuff, how a lot of racism started in cities and stuff, and how a lot of how the demographics of communities within cities and suburbs came to be. Like Baltimore, for example, I don't know the exact specifics, but I know as a whole in the US during like the 1950s, early 1900s, what they would do back in the time period when unionization was very prevalent. When people were like, okay, we want better working wages, we want better working conditions, what companies would do is most of those people up north, they were white people. They were white people in the factories and stuff. They said, okay, you can union all you want. We're going to go and bring in African-American workers from the South, bring them in and pay them less. And then they'll just go and fire out like an entire group of people. And then that creates racism and animosity because now the white people are saying, oh, you know, the African-American people stole my jobs. And then this is a housing practice. This is really messed up. They used to do something in the 1950s called block busting. So, you know, white people, you ever heard of white flight? White community, one black person shows up, all the races move. All the races, like communities going to shit, property values go down, all that. So that's a thing that people used to do back in the 1950s in cities.
Intentionally.
Yes, intentionally, is a guy will go to your house door to door and he say, hey, did you hear? A black family moved up the street. Your property value is going to go down because 1950s, everything's racist. And then people back then, they'd be like, oh no, I need to cut my losses and leave. And the guy would make them an offer for less than the house is worth.
Mm-hmm.
And then he buys that house, they move out. And then what he'll go and do is he'll sell that house to an African American family for higher than what he bought it at. And then that cycle perpetuates and it goes more and more. And one practice that they would even do is they would go and the white realtor, he'd ask like an African American guy, hey, I'll pay you $50 if you go drive down the street blaring your music. And something simple as that would scare people off. And then the other crazy thing, this is horrifying in a way. This didn't become illegal till 2009. There was a residential practice called redlining, where, have you heard about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, how, and it's crazy, I don't think a lot of people know about it, how in neighborhoods that are predominantly African-American, insurance rates are higher. Like, it doesn't get much more racist than that. I'm sorry I'm going on a tangent about this.
No,
this is just very,
keep going. I got
yeah,
questions.
it's very topic. Yeah, and just how, like, marginalization like that, and it perpetuates too.
Mm-hmm.
Because, so what they'll do is, people always argue that, you know, you should get money for infrastructure in a neighborhood from taxation. You know, they always say, oh, I pay my taxes, da, da, da. Why do I have to give my money to help other people? Think about it. If someone's living in an impoverished area, let's say in the inner city, predominantly African-American neighborhood, let's say the average income is maybe just below poverty level, like $14,000 a year. Even if you tax that for what, like 10%, that's only $1,400 per household or per citizen. Like, that's nothing in terms of taxes. You're not able to get hospitals. You're not able to get adequate healthcare, adequate education. And then that's another thing in itself you can make an entire podcast about, is the marginalization of education. Like, look at, this is something I did for my internship the other day that really baffled me, is I had to go and look at the PTA information in all the counties of Maryland and get there. So I had to look at the PTA for Montgomery County and then the PTA for Baltimore City. The PTA for Montgomery County had at least 50 subcommittees. The PTA for Baltimore City didn't even have a president. And then their website was from 2005.
Wow.
So it's just, you can see how far the differences in tax revenue is. And then that's a cycle of lower level education. It perpetuates. And you can't blame the people who live there for it, because how are you supposed to help yourself if you don't have the adequate resources to do so?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's something, and then people will go and say, you know, the resources are there, they're just not taking it, da, da, da. Like, institutionalized racism is institutionalized. The system is made to be against them. It's not made in their favor. So even though, you know, there may be scholarships and stuff, if you're in a classroom that's, let's say, 30 students to one teacher, and people in the class are misbehaving, the teacher's underpaid, they don't really care about their job, you're not going to have the level of education you get in a different area that has better tax revenue and that type of thing. And then racism like that, then it just perpetuates. It all ties back to racism.
Yeah. So how do you start to undo that?
In my opinion, the first level would be definitely subsidies in areas like that. And also lowering the tax, like the levels that you tax people under poverty level, or even a certain threshold. Because I mean, honestly, why are you taxing someone who's under poverty level at all? What are you gonna do with that $1,400? Like that, if you're under poverty level, you're using every dollar you have.
Yeah.
You're not big spending, you're not big balling. Like, sure, you may have some nice things, but at the end of the day, you're probably on food stamps, you're on WIC. You're just getting by. You need every dollar you have. So keep the power to the people. Then revitalization. Go in, the government needs to invest money, get these schools better, because I feel like the first step is education. If someone has solid education, they can get a better job, they could move to a better area. Or they can go and bring industries back to that area. They can bring big businesses into that area. It can fuel entrepreneurship. Because if people see other people succeeding, it does something to them. Like I remember from my urban geography class, they had us watch a documentary from the early 2000s called, if I'm trying to remember, it was like The Boys from Baraka. So what they did, they took a group of, I believe they were 7th graders, 15 7th graders, boys from the inner city of Baltimore, and they sent them to a school in, I believe it was Kenya. There's a school overseas. And what they found is a lot of these kids who have behavioral problems in school, learning difficulties, when they actually had the one-on-one time with a teacher and they were out of that environment, they learned and they thrived. They learn just as well as any other student in any other community. So it's not that the kids are at fault or the teachers, it's the environment. You need to go improve the education, improve the infrastructure, make the area more promising. Because if people are a product of their environment. If you feel like you have very limited choices, you're not going to go and explore all your opportunities. But if you see people around you flourishing, promise, entrepreneurship, you're going to be inspired to follow that. So I hope that answered your question.
First step, education.
First step, education.
First step, education. Does anyone want to play devil's advocate? Shri, you're not even paying attention. It's all right.
No, I literally pay attention every
We
time.
love
And like,
your
no,
energy.
I could make a devil's advocate for the what you said earlier about the. Let me think. I was literally just thinking like devil's advocate, but then I realized I need more information first, because without you can't do anything without the full information.
Yeah,
And then I
honestly,
feel like,
Shawn, I want to apologize to you because we're not qualified to have this conversation.
No, it's okay.
yeah, because I'm
But
literally taking the beginning. I'm like in the beginning levels of sociology classes. I was thinking about making sociology my minor because I actually found it really interesting because I was
That's the
reading
thing,
something
though.
about.
I don't think anybody's qualified to have these conversations. That's why we
What's
kind of like.
Yeah.
well, Devitt, but what devil's advocate points are you guys thinking of? Because I'm down to hear it.
I was just thinking about like the misappropriation of like funds and just like.
No, that's a huge issue, and that's probably what's going to hold it back in reality.
Yeah.
I can say all that I want, but at the end of the day, the solution and what actually gets done, they're never going to be the same. I mean, I talked to a friend about it the other day, like the past couple mayors that Baltimore City's even had, didn't they misappropriate funds?
I think so.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I took a planning class, I think a semester ago, and we talked about like alternative like planning methods as opposed to like the historic white guy with like a plan and all that, and like community involvement in the planning process. I know, Nico, do you still have dreams of holding like some sort of position in the local government, like?
Yeah, pretty much.
So maybe Shawn and Nico could
Work together.
eventually work together
That one day.
sometime in the future. And storm weather. What's the term again? Storm flood.
Yeah, it was a stormwater mitigation, but
storm water mitigation.
Yeah, I say that now, but I have no idea where I could end up going because a lot of things, the environmental field is so big and vague. There's so many things you can specialize in.
Yeah.
It's a super growing industry. So that's just one idea. Another maybe like urban planning or even doing something more sustainable agriculture if it can make enough money. Yeah.
So how do you fix old Ellicott City from flooding? Like, do you put up walls? What's the deal?
Okay, so
isn't that place just kind of fucked because of the way where it was put?
Yeah, it practically
the solution is knock it down and then build somewhere else.
Yeah, more than anything, just.
Oh man.
I mean, think about it. Why would you go? The thing is, it's not just that it's flooding a lot more recently. Historically, it's always flooded.
Yeah.
There's always been. It's just it's happening more frequently than ever before because of all the new development up top. That's something I can explain too, as well. It's gonna happen more and more frequently. If you guys would like to hear that.
Yeah, tell us.
Can I take a guess? Can I take a wild guess?
Go for it. I'm down to hear it.
Is it all the roads because they're not porous? All the
Yep.
floodwater just goes
That's
downhill. I learned
yeah,
about that.
yeah. All the impervious. It's called impervious surfaces.
Mm-hmm.
Surfaces that water cannot percolate through. So historic Ellicott, well, even Ellicott City 50 years ago did not look like Ellicott City today. Ellicott City 50 years ago was still largely woodsy, largely undeveloped. And a lot of the area up more in the woods, they were just single family homes, like on the end of an old driveway and stuff. But now if you go up there, there's all these new developments, new neighborhoods and all of that. You know, the little cookie cutter houses, they quickly bang them out. They're nice communities.
Mm-hmm.
But all those impervious surfaces, the water when it rains really heavy because you know, we're having more frequent storms due to climate change and all that, they're more volatile.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have all those impervious surfaces and more volatile storms dropping more water at once, it creates a funnel. And then all that water is just going to go right down the middle. And that middle is historic Ellicott City. So there's not really anything you can do besides maybe the buildings you have there. First and foremost, anything in the basement, have it be something disposable. Have it be not your main source of income because that's going to flood first.
Mm-hmm.
Second, you got to really evaluate the infrastructure there. And a lot of it's old. It's not made for flooding and stuff. So you got to say, okay, what can we fix? What can we cut our losses on? So like, let's say if you had a building in Ellicott, historic Ellicott City, and you really wanted to make a business there, maybe prioritize having the basis of your business in the top level of the building. Because you know how some of the buildings are the multi-floor. Do the second floor. Have that be where your main assets are. Then, you know, as you go lower down, they're more expendable. Because it's not a matter of if it's going to flood again. It's a matter of when.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's real sad, but it's the truth.
Maybe they could start like lifting some of those buildings and then like putting them on stilts. You know.
Yeah, something like that could help.
Yeah, it'd be
Yeah.
like it'd be
Tough.
Ellicott City's gonna look like Haiti. the
Yeah.
Caribbean.
Terrible, but it's true. Yeah.
Oh man. But that's a problem with like without like how do you get a problem like that? Is that the planner's not looking forward far enough? Just like the misunderstanding of like and just lack of like awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And then how does sustainable planning work? Like
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to start, like the planner, you have to think a lot of those homes, they're historic.
mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know quite the dates. I'd guess they're early 1900s, if not maybe a hair bit earlier. Like, I know to actually do a lot of renovations on those homes, you need a permit since they're technically historic buildings.
Wow.
Yeah, I actually had a family member. They used to have a home in Ellicott City. They put a porch on it, and they got fined. I think it was either $10,000 or $100,000.
Damn.
Yeah, they paid it though, but yeah. They don't play with that. But a lot of those homes, they were built. You have to think about the world 100 years ago. It's not the world we have today.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know.
They really find somebody. Ellicott City sucks. Like they're stupid. Like what do they find people? People should find them for having that dumb place.
Yeah, no, it's something weird with historic homes. Like externally, you can't modify them, and even internally, you can only modify them to a degree. It's a very, I don't know the concept. I want to own a historic home because like while they're aesthetically pleasing, functionality wise, they're terrible. Heating, cooling, electricity, all of that, renovations, non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I feel like first and foremost, it's just bad planning. Like, I mean, really, you built on top of a river that floods. Like,
what were you thinking?
Yeah, it doesn't get much more simple than that. And then the other thing too is that I mean, this is shown in some other places too. Like, what was it? The area in Louisiana, New Orleans, that flooded really bad in Katrina.
What was it?
You know what I'm talking about? It was those one homes.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was, but that was due to like the levees and stuff, wasn't it?
The levees, they made them only up to a certain point, and they were like, okay, this is good enough. This is the most we've historically recorded.
Yeah.
We're fine. So it's when you get that false sense of comfort and then you underplan that even the slightest, you know, what is it? Anomaly, it's going to take it all out. So I feel like that's part of it. And then so I'd say it's tough. Like you can't really, like historic Ellicott could say, when the infrastructure is done and it's built, you can't really like revitalize something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of it's historic, it's not something you could easily pick up and move. Some of it's literally built into the mountain face itself. So it's tough. Though I know like with new development, there's a plethora of things you can do. One thing you can do first and foremost is map the flood zone. Map how much rainwater or seawater, it's how much it's going to rise, how much it's going to percolate, where it pools at, where is the groundwater collecting at.
Mm-hmm.
Because places like Florida, their water table is practically super high. Like you could dig maybe 3 feet down in Florida in some spots and you'll hit water. In Maryland, it may not, like it's going to be way, way down because we're way higher above sea level.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one thing. Like if you're planning, like in theory, hypothetically, if I had to plan a community along the coastline, the first thing I want to prioritize more than anything is having some type of buffer on the shoreline. This is a big issue you see worldwide, is historically, or even naturally, shorelines always had mangroves. You know what I'm talking about? Like those mangrove forests on them?
Mangroves. Does that have anything to do with mangoes?
No,
No.
mangroves are like trees that are like they grew in water.
Yeah.
Okay.
Saline, saltwater environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have these mangroves or even coral reefs. You have a break. So if you have a real bad storm, those waves can't pick up momentum. You have something breaking their momentum. And
Yeah.
even then, you have something making a windbreak for that water coming off the ocean. It's not able to go blast those properties at high speed. But you know, everyone wants their beachfront home to have a beautiful view. No one wants to see some damn trees in the water. So when you build a new development, a lot of times they'll go and remove them.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you have a big storm come, the development goes and gets fucked. It gets destroyed. But if you had the mangrove still there or the coral reef still there, it has a level of protection. So that's the first and foremost thing, is that you have to have a buffer along the shoreline.
Mm-hmm.
Then from there, maybe designate the one area closest to the shoreline beyond the buffer as maybe a park or something that not quite residential, that if it flooded, yes, it's bad, but there's not going to be a loss of property, a loss of life. Like, you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You set yourself up with even more of like an indirect buffer. Maybe make it like a large, expansive park, have it go along the walkway. And then the other thing too is that while that buffer, the park acts as a buffer and it helps protect the development, it also enriches that neighborhood because now you have another park there. That's its own type of asset. And then on the other side of that park, that's when you start to throw in development. And even then, when you throw in that development, map how high historically that water has come. And then account for some anomalies. So maybe do like 1 or 2 feet higher than what's been historically recorded with flooding or sea level. And then when you build the development, think about the type of natural disaster you're going to face.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you're facing flooding, like what you said, build a house more on stilts. You see that up in New Jersey now in some areas. They have houses on stilts. Yeah, or build a house that maybe they have things, I've seen it, it's like a metal curtain that can come down when you're experiencing a hurricane to protect the windows. Like it's just a lot of planning. I feel like moving forward, it's foresight.
Mm-hmm.
You don't account for what's happening now. You account for what's happening in 5 years, 10 years.
Yeah.
I had a professor tell me when you go and plant a tree now in the city, when you're planning, you don't plant that tree for how the community is now. Climate conditions, you guess what it's going to be like in 50 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and I feel like the same is with development, because honestly, are you going to build a house for now or are you going to build it so that lasts?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like an issue with a lot of development now is this cookie cutter. They'll go put it in and then they'll say, you're good. Big storm comes, you're not good.
It's still a problem.
Oh yeah, it's a problem worldwide. Everywhere is experiencing this for the most part.
Yeah. And how does insurance play into all this?
I have no idea, honestly. I just imagine insurance rates are probably higher in areas that have flooding. Maybe you can get some type of flood insurance and pay like a premium. So I'm sure that like there's preemptive measures you can take. But at the end of the day, first and foremost, while you can have insurance for it, you want to prevent it altogether.
Yep.
Because even if you're able to be compensated money, all the time and energy relocating, you lose everything. So while they could hand you a check for, maybe 100, 200 grand, you're not getting your home back. You lost it all. Yeah.
Maybe insurance companies are intentional in maybe they play a hand in accelerating climate change and
I won't be surprised.
um
Mhm.
what else? What else? We could go far out, but I think
Yeah,
let's
I was getting
stay
this
grounded.
king, yeah, whole conversation itself.
Uh, what do you know about the Indian farmers, Sean? I feel like you post more about
Oh,
Monsanto more
yeah,
than
that's
that.
interesting. The farmers over in Punjab, the Sikh
Hmm.
farmers predominantly. Yeah, yeah. So what's happening over there is the government in that area, they're trying to sell a lot of that land to Monsanto. Are you guys all familiar with Monsanto?
Hmm.
Yeah, so I believe it's a US based company. And what Monsanto does, I've learned a lot about from, I have an internship right now with MPEN, the Maryland Pesticide Education Network. They do work to try to ban a lot of pesticides being used, pass legislation to try to restrict it, help give people more organic, healthier food.
Hmm.
So Monsanto, what they'll go and do is they want to industrialize farming. What they want to do, they want to make it monocultures. That's where you only grow one thing and you
Yep.
grow that thing efficiently as possible without disregarding human life and health.
Hmm.
So what Monsanto will do, just to tie it full back to the what's going on with the Indian farmers, it's sickening. I learned from my internship. What Monsanto will do, they'll take a seed and then genetically modify it so that seed has pesticides in it. So then that seed, it already has pesticides in it. They'll go in the field that they're going to spray those seeds at, they'll bomb it until it turns black with pesticides. And then that seed that they genetically modified to be able to withstand that, it grows. And when you grow a plant in the soil, it bioaccumulates whatever's in that soil.
Hmm.
When you water it, the water filters down, it helps that plant uptake anything that's in that soil. So in those crops, while superficially they look healthy, they are loaded with pesticides. And we are just now really learning the full effects about pesticides. And what we're learning, it's terrifying. Cancer, mental illness, plethora of things, fertility issues. So Monsanto, they are a big advocate for this. They want to cut out the middleman. They want to do the industrial farming themselves, bomb the entire area, pesticides and all. So what's going on in India is they're trying to force those farmers off their land.
Mm.
And if they're not trying to do that, they're trying to regulate and restrict what the farmers can grow so that they can only grow and sell Monsanto seeds.
Mm.
And with that, Monsanto actually patented all of their seeds.
Hmm.
So traditionally, when a farmer has a good harvest, they'll go and save some of their seeds back for next year so that their crop continually gets better.
Yeah.
But since Monsanto has a patent on these seeds, they can't do that. That's technically illegal now because you're dealing with a business commodity.
Hmm.
So they practically restrict the farmer's freedom completely, make them grow something that's unhealthy for you, unhealthy for the environment, restrict their profits, and practically take away all freedoms they have with their livelihood.
Yeah.
Yeah, these farmers, they've had that land for hundreds of years. It's been passed down in families. And now you have a big international corporation coming in and saying, hey, this is our land now. We tell you what you're going to farm.
Yeah.
If not, leave. And then you have the government, you have your own government backing that. Like, it's extremely unethical, it's immoral, and it's terrible. Because then the people in those neighborhoods and areas over in Punjab, India, they're not getting the same organic, nutrient-rich food they had before.
Hmm.
Have you guys ever? I mean, you guys have all eaten from a grocery store and stuff. Have you guys ever eaten like crops from a farmer's market?
No. Maybe
Yeah,
once.
all the time.
Yeah, you notice the difference in the taste.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah,
it's it feels richer.
yeah, richer, fresher, more nutrient packed, and that's the truth.
Hmm.
We big industrialized farming for grocery stores. They design crops and same with meat to not be nutritionally dense or tasty. They design it so that it can handle being industrially processed.
Hmm.
Like the tomato that exists right now in the grocery store is a bastard compared to what it was decades ago.
Yeah.
I saw somebody that said like some fruits are like years old by the time they get to the grocery store. Like they've been frozen.
Holy shit.
Yeah, they're frozen. Or it just happened the other day. I was horrified. So my mom got some grapes from Costco. They had a fungicide sprayed on them.
Wow.
Fungicide. Like, think about that. Even though in theory it's legal by the FDA, why am I ingesting something that kills a fungus? That's not okay.
Yeah.
But
I
one could
think
argue, isn't it inevitable that once the human population keeps growing, we need to change how we eat, and then we have to sacrifice certain stuff like flavor or naturalness in order to like actually feed people. I know
Yeah,
that's an argument some people make.
yeah. No, it's a valid argument. But to retort that, because it is a good point. That's a very good point. Is that that's a very good claim that we really need to move forward with the way we eat, how we farm. There's actually a movement going. I don't know if any of you guys have heard about it, called permaculture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where you try to work more with natural processes to get higher yields, more diverse yields, and you do a lot of organic farming versus the industrial level of farming where you bomb everything with pesticides and you only grow one thing.
Yeah.
Because another thing that happens with that, and this would happen in Punjab, and this happens all over the US, is the people who have to go and pick those pesticide-laden crops or spray the pesticides, they're marginalized people as well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is immigrant workers they bring up from Latin America, South America. Um, and they have very little rights or voice. Like, I actually read a book on it before, and there's been some instances down in Florida with strawberry farmers where it's technically slavery because they have no rights and they're just here on work visas. I've even heard reports that they'd go and lock them up at night.
Wow.
Yeah. And then these people, they have to go and work with the pesticides. They have to go and get exposed to the health issues. Like, they have very minimal protection with it. So you have entire food systems based upon suffrage.
Mm-hmm.
So then when you have a company like Monsanto going to India and trying to do that, they're trying to spread that suffrage. Whether indirectly or not, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But don't you think it should also be like our responsibility to have like someone who represents Monsanto in this discussion as well?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could do that. And then they'd say, we're feeding people, we're doing good and all. And I agree. But you just have to wonder how do you fiscally quantify the health effects that are going to come from their practices,
Mm.
And I think like that's definitely an important part. But like when you said like people are able to patent seeds now, like patent like a biological piece, like I feel like that's like could be a slippery slope for like crazy stuff in the future.
No, I agree.
I don't know how that is like allowed. Like how can somebody
Exactly. How do you
patent a
patent
biological like yeah.
Yeah, it's genuine. They have patents on it. And the other thing too that's super shady about these a lot of the agricultural companies is because it's patented and it's a business, you don't have to disclose what you put in that seed to the FDA.
Mm.
So the inspection on these processes is very, very minimal. And then the other thing too, they don't really have to clinically test any of this. The FDA in this country is a joke, in my opinion. Like, so you just have to wonder what is truly in the food that we eat at the molecular level. Like,
Mm-hmm.
don't get me wrong, all crops are GMO, you line breed them, you make them a certain way. But when you're directly altering them in a lab molecularly to withstand certain chemicals that are meant to kill bugs, we're eating that.
We are.
That's like spraying your tomatoes every day with Raid to keep the cockroaches away, then you eat that tomato.
Mm-hmm. That
Sure.
reminds me, last week we had a podcast with this lady, Susan, and she does like Ayurvedic consultations, and she talks about how like you get these toothpaste with like microplastics in them, and like put them in your mouth, and then you spit it out, and then the fishes eat them, and then you eat the fish, right? So
oh no, sorry, you're good. You're good.
and then just to get this other point out about like Monsanto and the seeds, I kind of relate all that to how the development in old Ellicott City was, right? There was a lack of like like looking forward into the future, I guess. Or
Mhm.
maybe I'm just like reducing it to that point. Like we said,
No,
there isn't
I-
really anyone here to argue for Monsanto's side of things, but uh, I see it in the same way as like the development in Old Ellicott City. It's like
mhm.
it's something's got to be done, bro.
Yeah, there's that same reoccurring theme.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we've had discussions for a while now about starting a community garden. I'm actually working on like grant proposals, and
Mhm.
yeah. So, Sean, we would love for you to be involved in that. You know,
Yeah, I'd
any
be down.
input you could. I know
Yeah,
you have a lot of plants, right? You have a lot of plants.
yeah, I got over 20 houseplants.
Oh man,
Yeah,
yeah. So,
yeah.
uh, we want to build a future, you know,
Mhm.
that's sustainable. Like
Mhm.
people
And
can,
help. Yeah.
yeah. And sorry if I just like took your train and then just like
No, no, you're
took it
perfect.
somewhere else. But
It's all realigned with with a lot of the stuff that we do. We don't have foresight with it.
mm-hmm.
We don't think about what this could ultimately lead to. Like back in the 1950s, if a kid had head lice, they'd spray DDT on their heads in school. There's photos of it. I've seen it.
Hmm.
And think about it. You're spraying DDT on their heads, and that was normal practice. Policies and how we do things need to adapt with time. They
Yeah.
can't be stagnant. Like I get that it's good, to keep old traditions, norms, stuff like that. But also, like especially with technology, food that we eat and all, it has to be able to adapt with time, and we have to be able to critique it and say this can no longer be this way.
Mm-hmm.
Something's gonna give. Yeah.
I
Yeah, I'm
couldn't agree more.
interested though. Oh, sorry, did I cut you off?
No. I cut you off actually.
Oh.
What are you interested in?
I was wondering what did the previous person who came on the podcast when she was talking about microplastics, how much did she talk about them?
It was pretty brief. We just mentioned it in passing, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she said enough. Now I've switched over to like a natural. We brush our teeth with charcoal now. Me and Nico.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but
Microplastics are something that really, really worry me on a fundamental level
mhm.
because they're everywhere. They're in every single one of us. They're from North Pole to South Pole, from the highest cliff to the Mariana Trench. They're everywhere, and we don't fully know what they cause.
Mhm.
So far, from what we found, there's been trends of cancer, lower
What
rates.
are they? Just like
So
tiny pieces of plastic?
yeah, it's so plastic, it doesn't really biodegrade, but over time it does break down. From wear and tear, exposure to the sun, UV radiation, plastic does break down, but it doesn't break down the same way a piece of paper would, like a leaf. Like let's say you have a leaf on the ground, it goes back to nature. Bioplastics, like let's say a water bottle, it'll take either hundreds or thousands of years. It will break down, but that does not go back to nature. Those particulates go and stay in nature. They'll exist forever.
Mhm.
Got it. And then we wherever the water we drink, the food we eat, we ingest those microplastics. And then there's a term called bioaccumulation. So that's where you see it in top tier animals. So the best way I could describe it is
The fishes. The fishes are a pretty good example.
yeah, the fishes are a good example of bioaccumulation. So you have a little fish that eats one microplastic.
Mhm.
And then you have a bigger fish that eats 10 little fish. So that bigger fish has 10 microplastics in it. And then that bigger fish, it gets eaten by, let's say, a tuna. The tuna eats 100 second level bigger fish. So now that tuna has 1,000 microplastics in it. Then we eat that tuna. So you see how the plastic, with every level you go up, it accumulates more and more and more.
Mhm.
That's why seafood as a whole, I mean, seafood's good and all, but in some areas it really worries me. Like I saw a documentary, they were doing salmon farming up in Norway. The salmon didn't have faces. They couldn't close their mouths.
What?
Yeah, it was absolutely like terrifying. That's why, like, I mean, I'm allergic to fish, but even before, if I had known this, I never would eat them. A lot of farmed salmon, they pump them full of antibiotics, and then they'll feed them pellets and stuff. And then the pellets, they make them out of these fish that come from, I don't know if it's the Baltic Sea. It's some sea up in northeast Europe. And there's so many factories on the coast of it. It's so polluted. So think about it. You have the fish that you grind into a pellet to feed to the salmon that's polluted to high health. Then you feed all these pellets to that salmon. So the salmon accumulates all these toxins.
Yeah.
You pump the salmon full of antibiotics.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing too, since this salmon's in a farmed animals, they get fat because they're not out there hunting, they're not out there moving. Fat is where toxins accumulates.
Oh my God.
No, seriously, I can send you guys documentaries if you want to share them too about salmon. It's despicable. Then the other thing too, in a lot of other countries, so something a lot of places will do, they'll import fish from other countries. So just because we banned a certain substance or chemical, another country may not. That's a big issue I believe they're having in Southeast Asia. It's either Thailand or China. And some of the fish farms there is you can have an organic fish farm on, let's say, the Mekong Delta. Let's say your fish farm on the Mekong River. You can have your organic fish farm. But if the guy up the stream from you doesn't have an organic fish farm, he can put all the toxins he wants in the water. That's going to flow onto your fish.
Yep.
Your fish are now going to have those toxins in them. And then it snowballs from there. Yeah, sorry for the tangent. It's just it's a very
important one.
Topic. Yeah.
That was a concept that was introduced to me in my planning class, environmental planning, and I mean, what's the word I'm looking for? It introduces this idea of interconnectedness, right? We think of interconnectedness in the digital age, and it's like social media, but we've always have been interconnected. It's just, I guess we've chose to just put that fact aside. And environmental planning is like a clear example of how, what you spray in the air will affect your neighbor, and it's just another factor to have to consider when you're planning for the future.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's almost frightening if you really made like a web chart and looked at the interconnectedness of things. It's both amazing and horrifying.
Yeah.
Like, you guys familiar with palm oil and stuff, and how that's
the farming of it.
And how it does a bunch of deforestation all around the world, and it makes all these animals go endangered and stuff. And then palm oil is in everything practically. It's in our food or cosmetics. So literally, me going and buying like a bag of Skittles or something, that could be contributing to the extinction of some animals over in Indonesia.
Wow.
Yeah, something like that. There's so much. And of course, it's tough because then you go and say, whose responsibility is it to change this? And then that's really subjective, because then you have to say, is it the consumer? Is it the producer? Who does that fall under?
Nico, who does that fall under?
I think it falls under everybody. And I think producer and consumer to be conscious. And then, like, I think you can even tie that back into like the like we were talking about, like products of people being proud of their environment. I feel like mainly it falls under like producer, and then it would mainly fall under like the government, the local government. But I think like everyone has to be conscious. So like the consumer, as well as like the people who live in the area of like our previous conversation. I feel like just a consciousness on everybody's part obviously is going to do good. You know what I mean? But I think like the majority of stuff obviously like falls on like the producer, because they know what they're doing. The consumer has to like go out of their way to find out what they're doing. But I do think like people obviously should know what they're putting in their bodies. So when you find out something like that, I don't really think people can be mad, because you're gonna eat something, or like I used to work in the pharmacy. Like, people don't actually even know the name of the drug they're taking. Like, they don't even know it's. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like, you can't really be mad when you find out something bad, because you trusted someone you shouldn't have trusted. You know what I mean? You should always do the research for yourself. But that's another thing. Like, people should be able to trust people, but I think like at this point we kind of know like that's not always true.
Yeah, no.
Shui, I'm gonna extend that question to you too. What do you think? Who's responsible? He's not paying attention, guys.
like no, I know I heard you say my microphone was just off, but like I agree with Nico. He said like we should be doing our own research, but it's also like up to you guys because you put that like they put that problem on us. But
It's kind of sneaky though, right? It's kind of
Mhm.
I'm trying to find like a real world like scenario like like
Yeah, I like I do agree. Like it's kind of sneaky, and like there is essentially, and like another thing is kind of depending on I don't know all the permits and stuff. Like people could grow their own. Like people have gardens in their backyard. Like we want to start a community garden. Like you could grow your own food. You can start your own farm, but like you need to go through the government to do that. So like they have the government has contracts with people who do this type of stuff, and then they also have like permits and stuff that regular people need to get in order to do it themselves. So like
mm.
you know what I mean, they have there it's all like I said, it's all interconnected, and the government knows what's going on. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? It's not like the government doesn't know what's in the fish that we eat. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
they
like it's like everybody knows. You know.
know.
Sounds like you're blaming the government.
yeah.
Yeah, like I
Not,
said, like they hold the most blame, but then like the people like it's just like fast fashion. Like people know that like when they shop at Fashion Nova, or like a lot of people do because it goes viral like probably every few months. Like people know that like that's like child labor in like
Yeah.
Southeast Asian countries. But like everybody still loves it. Most girls on Twitter still love to buy Fashion Nova, even though like every few months it goes viral. Like oh, child labor is all like fast fashion for Fashion Nova and stuff like that. So
yeah.
like not obviously not everybody buys Fashion Nova is conscious of that, but like a lot of people are. And
Mhm.
like everybody knows like oh the
That's the
iPhone
same
was
with
made in
Nike,
like some
Nico.
factory. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it's just
Yeah.
like all those fast fashion Nike's not like fast fashion, but it kind of is. Like it's big enough to be. You know what I mean? Like all those big brands do that. Like iPhone does it, and like I mean everybody in here has iPhone. I think.
Yeah.
But
You know what I
here's
mean?
the thing. There's also that argument that can be made that even though it's like child labor, if even if those companies weren't there, those children would be working somewhere else anyway. So like might as well
Yeah,
they might as well they make some
that
money.
argument doesn't really matter though, because like
But here's
okay,
the thing, they might as well
they're
make
gonna
some
be
money
doing
from us.
something. They're gonna be like doing something else that like is bad for them. Like okay,
But
you know what
another
I
thing
mean?
is, why do we care about like what other countries like people are doing?
Because it's
As
all
if it
interconnected. Maybe if you
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
I,
mean,
listen,
hey,
you'd pick up on that.
no, but
yeah.
here's the thing,
I'm sorry, Shu,
if it
but
benefits us, like I'm getting stuff for cheaper because the cost to produce a shoe there,
money's not real.
no, the cost to produce a shoe there is cheaper than here. We could be
What do
using
you
the
mean the
resource.
cost? Money's not real. So what cost? What is the
No, like
cost?
the human cost, because
The
humans
human
are
cost of what?
worthless.
The
Like let's say
human cost plays in from the money. The money's not real. So what are
no,
you
but
talking
like
about?
they're working for dude Nico, can we be serious? Like come on, like I'm actually trying to make an argument. For
you're
example,
playing a video game right now.
huh? I know, but I'm also talking. I'm digging.
Yeah, but regardless, like I know,
No,
like
but here's the thing, like
money. That's
no,
a
like
joke,
no,
but it's
here's like
also a
in
real thing.
America,
Like
think about it. Why would we use a labor to build a shoe or the same amount of labor we could be using to build like advanced electronics or like
But
Wait.
we're not
That,
doing that. We're not doing that. You're
we are
playing a
that,
video game.
dude, that doesn't I'm digging. I'm just digging. I'm building a moat, but I'm mostly paying attention to you guys. But
okay.
like
Because I'm curious your opinion on it. So then, how much money would you say human life is worth?
Hmm.
nah, it's, certain places are different more. Like is is an old man worth the same as a newborn baby?
How
Like
much is the life of the person working in the sweatshop worth to get our iPhone when they're going to have a lower life expectancy?
the thing is, even if without the factory there, the reason the factory is there is because that place is already not the best place.
So you think it's a societal?
Yeah, because think about it. Yeah, think about it. Why would Nike build a place where there's cheap labor? Because
Oh yeah,
that labor has to be cheap for a reason.
yeah.
So
The outfit.
even if Nike didn't build a factory there, that means they're probably still gonna be working for a different company, or they're probably gonna be living in extreme poverty
So
with
it's at
no job. Because if
the
even if they're gonna do like labor, uh, if they work at Nike, they still make some money, right?
Mhm. So it's an inherently flawed system. It's a
Yeah.
capitalistic system. The capitalistic system. I learned in my economic geography class. I even asked the professor. I was like, "Is there a way to do capitalism without causing suffrage at some point along the levels?" And he said no.
Yeah.
Because I know someone's always going to be exploited in capitalism. It's
I don't
almost
really agree with that. I don't agree with that. I mean, I do think because I mean it's like I don't really think everybody in life is like not everybody's supposed to reach the same outcome. Like for
Yeah.
one, everybody's body is different. You know what I mean? Like everybody not everybody's the same, so not everybody should end up the same. You know what I mean? Like I don't think it's fair people get like taken advantage of. like when these companies are like open factories in these places. But I don't think capitalism is inherently flawed. I think that capitalism is very easily manipulated to work in favor of
Yeah,
some
that's
at the cost of the many. But I also don't think there's any better system for the world we live in now, because the world we live in now, it's not the system's flawed, it's the people are flawed, and that we don't have any like our moral tolerance is so low. You know what I mean? Because like if people were better than that, then we would be doing better. You know, if people were
uh,
better than those factories, they wouldn't exist.
Dude, but they want to work in those factories.
No one wants to work in. No one
They do.
wants to
They
make
do.
a
Here's
shit.
the no. For example, I come from a third world country, right? If so, I don't know
No,
the people in
you
my country.
don't. You were born
Burma, no,
here.
I was born in Burma, but like,
I
think
was
about it.
born in Burma.
If people there, they're like, if my people know that next week Nike's gonna build a factory there and they're gonna hire people. There's a lot of people that maybe, yeah, if 10 cent, like whatever amount they're paying is not the best, but it's still work from an American company, and it's work regardless. And I know many people probably want to work there. Even if not, they're probably gonna be doing something else, like maybe criminal activity or maybe another factory. Like they
Mhm.
want to, if they don't want to work there, they're not gonna work there.
I feel like a good compromise for it is like, you guys ever heard of like fair trade items and stuff?
Hmm?
Fair trade.
What's that?
I've heard the term,
So
but please
yeah,
explain.
yeah. So it's like where companies are upheld to like a moral level where if they do outsource the labor or outsource resources, they pay the workers a livable wage with safe work conditions. So I feel like that's where like the happy median probably lies.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Where while they're outsourcing the labor, and yes, they're doing it to save money and it's for the capital gain, they're not causing as much suffrage in the process. I feel like that's the goal, is that you want to try to mitigate the amount of human suffering that it's causing. So like it's like what Shui's saying, you're providing economic opportunities for people at your own capital gain, but in turn, while you're providing these economic opportunities, you shouldn't just be stiff arming the people and making them work with acid that's going to kill them in like 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
But you should provide them, because I mean, really think about it. Nike has the money to make these factories safer.
Yeah.
I thought, what company was it? It was Apple or Nike. They had a factory in China collapse like a couple years ago. You guys ever hear about that?
I think that was Nike.
Yeah, it was Nike. They had a factory fucking collapse. Like Nike that's the thing. I feel like a lot of the issues here, we need more regulation with companies to uphold more just safer workplace practices. Like just accountability. Because I mean, at the end of the day, they got the money for it. I get everyone wants to make money, but how many millions, is worth the suffrage? That's just my take on it.
I was saying some people are just built differently. Like some people don't care if other
Mm-hmm.
people suffer. Like me, I think I have a higher tolerance. Like if I know if I'll get $1 billion tomorrow, but 1,000 families are gonna like be slaves, like I'll probably take it. But I'm not an asshole for that. It's just like the opportunity's there. It
No, it depends on
billion
the person.
$1 billion could help so much.
You
Yeah.
know what's messed up about it is that like that isn't a part of the image that they project. Like they project like these socially conscious, like the campaigns are always about like
Yeah.
some form of activism, and like
Yeah.
come on,
That's
dude.
what I agree with. That's like really bad. Why are they doing that if they're not living up to what they're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like how can you say you're against like inequality when you're literally like not even thing is like yeah, I like your middle ground, paying a livable wage
Yeah.
for that country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But they don't even, some of them, they don't even do that, and they're preaching about this equality. Like
Mm-hmm.
It's hella foul.
Yeah. I
yeah,
think it's
I like this conversation.
Yeah, it's a good one. I like how this is going. Yeah.
We'll have you back on for part two, Sean, in
Mhm.
a couple months. We'll talk about how your internship went.
the
You
gym.
said you have one semester left, right?
Yeah, I got one semester.
One semester. All right. And thank you, viewers, for watching. Uh, any closing statements, Sean, Nico, Shui?
Thank you very much. It was a long time coming, Sean.
Yeah, I'm glad. I actually had a lot of fun talking. I'd love to do it again.
Shui?